Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your break, had some lively conversations, perhaps purchased some drinks, and tipped generously. Because right now, we're back for our alumnus reader, Patrick Millian. So one of the first things I ever learned about Patrick was that he writes poems about opera. Opera! You guys, opera! The heavy costumes and like the little glasses that you look at and you peer very closely at people in the translations and the remnants of European empires that are all fallen, all kinds of excess for its own sake. And it makes sense. When you meet Patrick, you see an effusive personality, somebody who loves to spread his joy to other people. And so opera is the natural analog. It's this extension of a moment of joy or of sorrow in a kind of aria, an intentional expansion, a gasp that explodes. The ballad turned Baroque, perhaps. His poems eschew false distinctions between speech and song, performing their excess through real moments of the concrete world. He's a current doctoral student, Wayland Fellow, and instructor of English at UW. And his poems have appeared all over the place, including Denver Quarterly, 14 Hills, and Prelude. And he has also produced musical and visual art collaborations. He researches multimedia studies and opera libretti. Please welcome Patrick Millian.
Hi guys. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was wonderful. It is so good to be on this stage at Castalia. It was like, as soon as I graduated, I was like, I can't wait till I get to come back to Castalia. So happy to be here. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm only reading one poem tonight. It's a long one, so I have to get in all my thank yous right now. But thank you, everyone. Thank you to the readers that I am fortunate enough to share the stage with tonight. You are incredible. Maya, who's going to be incredible. Hugo House. Thank you. This poem, I have been thinking all day about how I'm going to introduce it, and I didn't come up with anything. So what I'll tell you is, you know, a lot of the people in this room have been lucky enough to do the Friday Harbor program. And a lot of amazing poems have come out of that. And I always felt like I was doing something wrong because I wasn't writing any like island poems. Aside from one about a sexy rowboat, but like, that's for another night. But after like 5 trips to the island, I was like finally ready to start writing my island poem. And it took me a year. And it's finally ready. So that's what I'm reading to you guys tonight. It's called Plum. That's plum with a B at the end. And yeah, thank you all so much. Plum. There was a black fox. I swear there was one obsidian slick dash. This one black fox quadrant lit by white tip of the tail, tips of the teeth. There were 2 black foxes. Now is when the method fails. Plumbed, taut, line may snap or slacken. Don't ask where line's must comes in, since line must and must never any number of things when sunk. How demanding the composite method, but wreckage demands, otherwise nothing. As in the painting of the wrecked ship, where she forgot to paint the shipwreck, or the remainder, the 2-ton rotting rudder, of all the beasts, the luminous tears stepping out of the sea, 4 phosphoresce, masses of inconsequence washed up in a slow glow, eventual and intractable, with lap, 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 water lips in my mouth, the tick falls into my anthology of pastorals and crawls to the absolute depth of the gutter, stops. I write, here were monsters in the margin, and snap it shut. There is nothing fox-colored on this island until the fox washes up, charming wreckage. I hold out my hands to ask permission of the morning and see where something crosses the path of another something. It seems untoward to speak about dimensions. My own white vegetating tip sunk into the quadrant, the point at which reservation crosses under reservation, as in, I reserve the permissive island for the good of the canine, and the glowing fit of monstrosity reserves me. The method of wrecking into absence is one of punishment. There will be no third fox. Gorged on medical fantasy, as much a method I can see in what I set out for. An alternative, tell the girl on the ferry about all my chronic conditions. Another, tell her about all of yours. And another, point at the jellyfish and aim my strapping mouth at it. From the terminal, I called to say we docked and that the rain here is as it was at home. Or is, you proposed. I let it drop. Gorged on medical fantasy, you have a full stomach but have given all your blood away. At night, the monsters and foxes splay up from the soil because their arteries are full now. They thank you. Each variety of cryptid here has its own science. One with 3 elbows in each arm practices a logician's palmistry. One that crows every time something is born, grasps salinity as the clump of mucus dissolves into a glass of clear water. The culture of monsters demands the water be spilled, and questions of clarity become troubled. Groundwater never made sense before I thought of it as metaphor. You are a softening and moving, cryptid below my feet, a touch of the scientific and, in only a way, absent. Even what looks full is a space for infinite, buzzing lips. Only now and here is infinite, remotely appropriate. My mission has nothing to do with submersion, but everything to do with periphery. Languages appealing to me are endless periphery. Foot of a dark reference staked to the rake's teeth. Coal-fired iron gummed with the wrinkles of a plastic referent. The only form of knowing I don't despise is through the telephone. Your sad voice cupped in my hand is barely seamed against my ear. But how have we been speaking without saying what we're measuring? In the most obvious way we know, asking the dead first. They say, biology answers the easiest questions, but chemistry the hardest. When you are confused, an architecture replaces experience, and the spindly compass twirls its way from one circle's beginning to another's end. A circle is an empty center, passing. Whales, black as raisins, bob down passages toward a spent syntax. I've forgotten where to put the subject, so put it everywhere. But nothing has to be a mimetic gesture, say the whales. Unseasonably complex. The mammal's treatise on grammar degrades all theories of negators in one swift chapter. And every sample sentence refers to a telescope pointed at the osprey's nest, an ant colony climbing up to eat the hatchling, and sea mist condensing to a salty bead in the chewed empty eye socket. Would we plumb that one for an epiphany? Before their epiphanies, the villagers would paint their pigs to look like whales and throw them into the sea. The roughly round splash subsided during the drowning process. Their thrashing was only wringing the water from their bodies as dry a drowning as possible, that science would, 1,000 years later, verify with the documents referring to the heavy hoofing. We lack the orthography to read. All I want is for you to believe my stories and fall asleep on the phone with me, not worrying the hard fin of your abdomen. What is it making us monstrous? Twist the sweat of your sleeping self until you can smell it staling the slow death of all naked functions. Between you and me, I don't doubt that something's been sneaking into the settlement and reading my books, or that there is a well into which the bones have been thrown. But the villagers were replaced by gingham dresses stuffed with black squirrels a long time ago. Soon after, they hunted themselves with crossbows to extinction. Many civilizations make one potential. A monster with the fur of a seal and head of a seal and hands of raccoons reads how the villagers replaced water with rules against thirst. Logical. Soft parts of the dead lisp themselves away and into the black-furred sea. In the hide-bound noctuary is the science on the bubbles full of decay. Head of a seal, dismal nostrils unfolded, returns to us as the skull of a seal. Beyond the trees, the dump site has stopped to smell less like anything and more like everything else, which is why I'm constantly wondering how I've wandered into it, into the beam of light that can't see behind its self-steamy haze. Strange headless pin of a frozen well, and the stone coil squirming under it, and the bones somewhere in the steam is a less than perfect model of afterlives. When I was a kneecap, I was acceptable. Not having a face doesn't disqualify an animal. Breathing can be simpler than we make it. A membrane is a wet system of latches. Corner yourself, say the soft-bodied. Yesterday's noon recovered me from wasps. Organize yourself, say the tall and sectioned. I will fill my heart with latches. Answer, no, 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 no. Do I lack the religious precision and end up in obscure paradise? Hypnagogic? Heaven, I worry, requires our cooperation to umbrella out of the punch of sky we see to the unplumbed we don't. No one taught me this language. I walked into it with my pockets full of lead. That's the bony key to unlocking the floor out from under the labyrinthine clump, a revision of our ideas of elegance. The textbook broken across your chest. The diagram reads your heart's trochees, while my anthology oozes tick's blood. It's what turns the tree into a poem, incarnating momentarily as pulp. The word for any organism's anomalous unshaping is pseudopod, as in, I will fucking remorselessly kill you with my bare pseudopod. The villagers had no such words. Instead, they had the moment of seeing a rake beside the decaying squirrel's jawbone and thinking, their similarity is no power of mine. An orange and blue flare in your MRI literalizes the process of losing grip. More tests. Questions concerning humility have decreased, so I decrease my humility and question your will to break teeth on the strings of your heart. The next test reveals your organ is only shaped anomalously, not pathologically. I once looked down a microscope to see a red dot. That's what it looks like sometimes. No one had any idea where they were half the time. Then they realized they'd sort of die and become dots. I stared so long at the slide that the floaters in my eye made it look like the dot was moving, pushing strips of itself across the glass. She changed out the slide, a translucent arthropod, its heart a clear disc, vibrating in what might have been its chest. The electronics are steadily melting, though they arrange their bodies to intercept the sun arranged against the walls in triangles. Two of them walked to the dock between rains and saw the basketball head of a seal V'ing the water toward them. It opened its mouth as if to yawn or speak, but let out a long, wheezing cough, followed by a gentle click and rewind. I tell this story all the time, but replace them with myself because I want a narrative that's solid. On the wall in Act 1. Could the seal ever be a soft-mouthed Labrador ratcheted to biology's ungainly brink? I miss you but don't know what to do now that you aren't dying and we know it, a somehow familiar embarrassment. One result of science is black mold footprints down a leviathan's spine. I meant to curl it up into the green felt of a suitcase, solitary phenomenon, the spiraling comet. Sleeves of moon, the speedboat's twin wakes stir up a bottom full of waste and soft bodies. Electronics melt into the pine floor only yesterday swept of needles. Strings of code under the brushed aluminum tell the animals what to be and when. Wet-headedness, but a glitchy omission in the where complicates them all to radial symmetry. I can represent plasticity on a scaly rectangle of beast. But the bottom of a meditation is listening, and a sound schematic of what passes. Behind, ocean flipping itself over the beach. Before, 4 snaps, dry snaps. Left, some bees fluffing themselves with pollen, right, a piano, major chords spelled. My listening has radial symmetry, 4 cardinal directions, and 4 giant gaps toward which I turn. If I hold my breath, my brain balloons out of my head and eats sound. I exited natural history with my arms full of plastic. After exiting the room with a poster of someone holding a bouquet in front of some stylized genitals, the word harvest. He was a scientist that returned to work in the lavender farm, threshing buds with a parenthetical blade. Bee, blade, flower became his commission triptych. He sketched his emblem on a flap of cardboard and then burnt it to the audience's applause. As they circulate from the theater, they notice their shirts are stuffed with fragrance and pollen. I enter through the plastic curtain with shotgun shells full of seeds. In the scientist, in the farm, in the play, in the theater, in the hospital, in the poem, a plastic cup with a screw-on lid. I am the swallower of plastic, he said to his peers, after refusing to provide a sample. I sleep in a room that is only architecture now that all the foxes have died, creepers rioting their sternums into the dirt, then seeding and reseeding and reseeding until the word corpse is uncontained. My irony? A bee, a blade, and a flower all winked at each other when I failed to maintain a continual state of lipstick devotion. In the scientist, in white, in the imagination, a bouquet sucks every fleck of sugar from his buttery blood. When the blood is buttered, the twitchy verbiness of understanding enforces my theory of the tide's technology, but not the daring explorers, whose technology is kinetic and handheld. One way to understand the world operates through suspicion, as in, I consider all methods to be suspect. An alternative is technology, but that too is suspect. Verby twitchiness. He found an island humped with the bodies of hairy, mannish things. He could fill you with men and the reddest mannishness, since you're neither reckoning with nor recovering from coincidence. An actor and an action is a character. An actor and an inaction is an island of apish mass clumped, massive, and afloat. The librarian founded the island to have something to know the history of. Do you remember when I said there would be no third fox? Take this moment to reorient yourself with the rules we've established. An actor and a question is nothing. The librarian's missing volume. An actor and an animal are diminishing. The suspect's stupid motive. The villagers were as hairy-backed as the island itself, black turning red. One way they understood God was by the sun, which was both in the sky and on the island, changing the colors of each of their bodies' hairs. Now, of course, we have telephones and a catalog of proclivities. There was no third place for the sun to be. When it struck the shiny fur of the seal's wet head as it swam in a tight circle, their similarity is no power of mine. I have taken the time to imagine their poetry, and it tastes like sweat without sweat, what I've always wanted control over. Keep time and control of your arms and legs as you swim your mouth against the waves. That gladiolus crest sledges the water into lobes. When I think of an idea to propose, I always, for no reason, arrive at clarity. If it were made of a clearer plastic, we'd see vegetable and mineral organs filling the cryptid's torso. A cryptolinguistics commonplaces the burials unburied from the island's sea, each word a lung music, lump-sucking. I don't have 4 arms, but my shadow does. My encyclopedia, which covers all kingdoms, neglects the more circumstantial life forms in favor of the shapely bodies that fill the folds of all manner of ceremonial dress. A line demarcating one type of life is drawn deeper in the ground than you know. Do not step out of this shape, meaning a wreath of human hair or a spiny vertebrae. On the level of structure, the wave belongs to all kingdoms and the unmappable. Its genitals are licked from the sword and belly up in crassly ungendered lilies, architecture encouraging abandonment and a bit much to be bitten out. Those are our shapes. Will we ever be lucky enough not to be talking about ourselves? Cryptid says yes, but it will be too unfortunate to take seriously, whatever that means. Cryptid takes a branch and knocks it against a tree 10 times. After much debate as to the meaning of this gesture, the scientific community determines Cryptid does so to make 9 silences. Villagers' hair, due to a mutation, was sticky enough to clump into one massive shell about their bodies. How long does it take? The mutation? To measure the crookedness of the ground against what we know of the ground. Beyond gravity sinks the inherited phraseology into deeper parts of our knowing. Meaning, I've meant every word so far and will mean the next several. But when the season of trees washes up insignificance, I know better. So many living things on this piece of the world that most of the evidence is a crushed jelly death. Jagged snap of an unfurred leg bone, or the bloated body delacing in the harbor. Glut of verbs, subsumed with deer. Deer is common rag worrying up water. Deer is de-quarantine. Deer etymology. Backscatter. Lead pipe. Glass animal. In the cave of the traditional dead animal artwork is a plastic telephone. When I pick it up, an organ tells me about its anomaly. Scan etymology. Drippy bounce back from the near abroad. Someone used up all the violence of language. I know better than to mean anything. I speak into the receiver. I am not absent. There was once a simultaneous abolishment and enforcement of the fact check. Fact etymology. It is possible for a beast's neck to be thicker and longer than its waist. An inert sea lets me scan the horizon for every signing island. I am returning. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. That was beautiful. You might not have realized this, but next door is the Red Badge Project, spearheaded by actor Tom Skerritt, who is someone I never thought I would see in real life.
Who is that, Tim?
He's an actor. Obviously, you've never seen High Noon.
Oh my God!
But talk about being in proximity to the body of the star. I say with a wink to Maya. So Maya Sonnenberg is the author of the story collections Cartographies and Voices from the Blue Hotel, and a chapbook of prose and drawings titled 26 Abductions. Other fiction and nonfiction have appeared in Fairy Tale Review, Web Conjunctions, Diagram, The Literarian, Hotel America, and numerous other places. She is our professor at the University of Washington and has received grants from the Washington State Arts Commission and King County for Culture. But her greatest achievement by far is that she is my thesis advisor. So I feel compelled to share this brief anecdote. One of the reasons I applied to UW was that I wanted to work with Maya, and I came to this realization after reading Voices from the Blue Hotel, and especially the story Noctumbus, which is about a young punk rocker whose girlfriend disappears one day without a trace. My God, I thought after I read it, Maya Sonnenberg has written a short story which somehow captures the theme of every relationship I've ever been in. Maya is famous in our program for running a workshop that actually focuses on the writer's needs instead of the needs of everyone else's ego. And also for attempting to teach us what a goddamn participial phrase is, if only our egos would allow us to listen. Please join me in welcoming Maya Sonnenberg to the stage.
We're going to have visuals, So,
That's
but we
right.
need one. We just should we get to go? I'll just wait when it's time to do the next one.
There you go.
Okay. You guys can't see that, can you?
We're getting there. Sorry.
Okay, while that's happening, thank you, Tim. That was great. I'm glad you liked that story. Yeah. Yeah, because I had tried for like 20 years to write a punk rock story. And then, like, I did it, and now I don't have to do it again. Thank you all for coming. Thank you guys for organizing Castalia. It's always a pleasure to read here. And I was telling Daniel before, it's great to have to read to like an audience that's half the same every year, because it means you have to read something new, which is what I'm going to do tonight. I am reading the first two sections of a new thing, essay-ish thing. I don't think it needs too much introduction. It's called After the Death of Shostakovich Pear. So for those of you who are not French speakers, that's not the fruit, that's the father. Saying the name and then Pear means like the head of the family. And it starts with an epigraph from Donald Barthelme's novel, The Dead Father. "What is that?" the children asked, pointing to the dead father. "That is a dead father," Thomas told them. The children hugged each other tightly. "He doesn't look dead to us," said the girl. "He is walking," said the boy, "or standing up anyhow." "He is dead only in a sense," Thomas said. So the first part is prelude. In 1966, my family spent the summer in Colorado, where this photo was taken. My father taught at the art school in Aspen, and my mother painted in a barn under which a cold mountain stream ran, the water delicious but laced with arsenic. While the Aspen Festival Orchestra played Mahler and Beethoven, I lay on the grass outside the tent, dreaming of cowboy boots and suede jackets with fringe. My father loved music. In subsequent summers in Maine, we went to many chamber music concerts in the perfect box of a room that is Kneisel Hall. Violins, cello, viola, piano, and the sound of mosquitoes buzzing. Yes, I know this sounds idyllic. In Aspen that summer, my father stopped wearing button-down shirts and ties and suit jackets. In Aspen that summer, Paul Blackburn recited poems against the war in Vietnam. In Aspen that summer, in the middle of one night, my father took a 50-pound bag of flour up the mountain and spilled out an enormous peace sign so that Secretary of Defense McNamara would see it during his visit the following day. Okay, next one. I wish you could hear the bells. They're the first thing you notice in Shostakovich's suite for two pianos. Pealing, tolling, resonating, ringing bells. Not real church bells, but obsessive, interclanging chords played on the two pianos. In some form, in every movement, they return. Later in the piece, later in your listening to it, I wish you could hear how this motif, or an echo of it, both melodic and dissonant, intertwines with the tender lyrical tune, the lively dance, the yearning andante, the furious runs, the hectic funeral march, so high-stepping and ridiculously fast, the trilling bird. Shostakovich was 15 when he wrote this piece. His father had just died. Suddenly, unexpectedly, his father, who had loved jokes, wire and ring puzzles, gypsy songs, and Tchaikovsky's opera, Eugene Onegin, came home one night with a headache and went straight to bed. 2 weeks later, he was dead of a brain hemorrhage. Or he came home with a cold and 2 weeks later was dead of pneumonia. Or he died of a heart ailment accelerated by the strains, financial, material, and social, of coming to terms with the new regime and the aftermath of revolution. Accounts differ. Here's the thing, how he died didn't matter. Imagine Mrs. S. coming out of the bedroom on the morning of February 24th, 1922, and saying, "Children, Father is no longer with us." Imagine her hair in disarray, her padded dressing gown tied with a cord ending in tassels, like the tasseled cord from fancy drapes. Imagine Dmitri and his sisters in their night clothes, huddling together on a Victorian love seat with dainty claw feet, a high curved back, and blue velvet upholstery. Dmitri is 16. Marussia, is 18. Zoya is 13. In their baby pictures, they all wore white dresses. Gone now is the summer place at the Rennenkampf estate, the servants, the company car. Gone is the jokester and singer. Mrs. S. takes a job as a typist at the Chamber of Weights and Measures, and later as a cashier at the Workers' Union, where she is suspected of stealing 100 rubles and fired. Marussia gives up taking classes at the ballet school and instead plays piano for the other students. Imagine all the pliés and all the rond de jambe. Imagine all the grand jetés she can't do, wouldn't have the heart to do even if she could. Mrs. S.'s sister and her husband move into the apartment. Shostakovich keeps on attending the Petersburg Conservatoire, studying piano and composition. Only later, when things have gotten even worse, does he take a job at the Bright Real Theater, playing piano to accompany the silent movies, a job he hates. But meanwhile, in March 1922, Shostakovich writes the suite for two pianos in F-sharp minor, Opus 6, and dedicates it to his father. Through the rest of that year and into 1923, he plays it at private gatherings in Petrograd and elsewhere with Marussia. He writes it to play with her, to include her in this act of mourning. Imagine Dmitri and Marussia looking up over their keyboards at each other, the grand piano lids like interlocking puzzle pieces, or not looking at each other at all. I remember the funeral of Dmitri Bolisevich, the head of the Shostakovich family in the Alexander Nevsky Monastery, wrote Elena Trusova, a Petrograd musicologist. Friends went up to poor Maria and Mrs. Shostakovich by the fresh grave to offer their condolences. Dmitri and Zoya stood a little off to one side on a mound of newly dug earth. Zoya's distraught little face was wet with tears, and her coat was unfastened. Dmitri stood, his cap crushed under his arm, slowly wiping his spectacles. His eyes looked especially defenseless without them, but his entire face was filled with inward concentration and composure. No need to go to him with condolences. And this is the second part. Danse fantastique. After his stroke, my father still loved music, but he couldn't decide anything, not even which concerts to go to. I bought the tickets for him. The Philharmonic, the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, and his aide took him. My father wrote, "My mother Leah died last night at 3 a.m. in her sleep. Mercifully, her agony not drawn out, enough agony her knowing, being told by the doctor, seeing in all our faces the awareness of her death. The game played out, in the end, true." My father's stroke damaged parts of his brain, impulse control, language, visual memory, for an artist, a kind of death. He went into his studio and just stood there. His paintings had been dark, formal, and highly intelligent, quoting Wallace Stevens and basing geometrical decisions on the golden section. His sculpture had been complex tangles, forms that might or might not be tables, chairs, planks, palpable rectangles in space. He wrote, "The dismantling and the incompletion of parts were really means to another building process." Cleaning out my father's closet, I found a notebook, opened it randomly, and saw this line: "Charcoal, our dog, will die today." Immediately, I closed the book. Once, when I was in New York, I took him to hear medieval choral music. I think he liked it. Afterwards, he refused to use his cane, leaned on my shoulder instead. He held my hand and kissed me goodnight, a peck on the lips, still called me Maichka, my baby name. On the notebook's cover, a close-up picture of stones, rocks on a beach. I opened it again and found a hollow door. I held piles of his things in my arms: flannel shirts, postcards from Italy, a tennis racket. After his stroke, my father remembered some songs, the tune and all the words to "Brother, Can You Spare a Dime," for example. 2 years after the stroke, he began to paint again. Organic swirls of bright pinks, acid greens, and bilious yellows that bruised my eyes. My father wrote, "And I kissed her face and hands. She was very cool. She didn't owe me that." In The Garden of Forking Paths, a story by Jorge Luis Borges, a Chinese man spying for the Germans in England during World War I must, somehow, in the few hours before his sure death, let his hated superior back in Germany know the name of the exact location of the new British artillery park on the River Anchor. To do so, he murders a man with the same name as that city, so that his boss, in his arid office in Berlin, endlessly examining newspapers, will be able to read the report and so learn the location. In a typically Borgesian conflation of fate and coincidence, the murder victim is a scholar of ancient China, of our spy's own ancestor who wrote a novel and constructed a labyrinth, or, it turns out, wrote a novel, a pile of chaotic manuscripts that is a labyrinth of time. The scholar says, in all fictional works, each time a man is confronted with several alternatives, he chooses one and eliminates the others. In the fiction of Xu Pen, he chooses simultaneously all of them. In the work of Xu Pen, all possible outcomes occur. Each one is the point of departure for other forkings. The scholar says he believed in an infinite series of times. We do not exist in the majority of these times. In some you exist and not I, in others I and not you, in others both of us. In the present one, which a favorable fate has granted me, you have arrived at my house. In another, while crossing the garden, you found me dead. In still another, I utter these same words, but I am a mistake, a ghost. But even before the scholar says this, even before they meet, the spy imagines his ancestor's labyrinth as infinite, of one sinuous, spreading labyrinth that would encompass the past and the future. Already the story turns in on itself, an infinite loop, snake eating its tail, a Mobius strip. Or is it spiraling out from itself, as complex as a galaxy? I first read this story when I was 20, and it made me tremble, on the brink of understanding, on the ledge between possible and impossible, grasping for something just beyond my reach. The real story containing the plan for an unobtainable, impossible novel, the novel I wanted to write. Spy and scholar follow a zigzag path to a house in the middle of a garden that also contains a pavilion, and there, in a library of Eastern and Western books, they discuss a writer, the spy's ancestor, who spent the last 13 years of his life writing a novel in the pavilion of the limpid solitude in the center of an intricate garden. The scholar's story about solving the mystery of this novel, titled The Garden of Forking Paths, takes place at the heart of a garden and also takes place at the heart of the story the spy tells us. This story, also titled The Garden of Forking Paths. When I was 20 and first read this story, I zoomed in on its puzzle making, its infinite regression, its self-reflexive qualities, writers leaving clues, readers finding themselves in the text, trying to interpret and failing and trying and failing until something clicked, only to find another door opening. I loved the conundrum of garden labyrinth and labyrinthine novel and how they are the same, conflating time and space, landscape and words, just as the spy does when he sends his message via newspaper back to Berlin. This pleased me endlessly, reminding me of those metal ring puzzles that beg you to disentangle them and then tangle them back up again, or those wooden block puzzles that you must slide into and out of place in a particular order, or those boxes with hidden compartments whose solution you are always forgetting. In the story, the characters discuss stories and gardens inside a garden, inside a story, until one of them kills the other. Not out of anger or fear or ideology or passion or for material gain, but because the killing conveys information in a single word, tells a kind of story. This labyrinth of labyrinths, this still makes me tremble. My father wrote, "Her left hand is lying on the coffin, very much as it was in the hospital. I looked at it a long time and kissed it and her lips. In the dream, the hand shrivels to 1/4 its normal size, and I am saying Hebrew prayers, but I don't know the meaning of the words." My father wrote, "I must have no guilt or little. There was no other way for me to live." After my father's death, I found the notebook again. Now I could dip into it, but only for a minute at a time and always with trepidation, like before stepping into very cold ocean water. Preparing my father's taxes, I sorted tiny paper receipts. They'd been in his pockets, his hands. Now they were in mine, somehow damp and dusty at the same time. Between my fingers, they seemed warm. My father wrote, "I keep remembering another morning when I was 14, awakened by screams and terror, gnawing, palpable, dressing quickly, knowing my father had died, seeing my brother standing in the hallway downstairs crying 33 years ago." My father wrote, "She had asked me, I had to go back." My father wrote, "I remember trying to teach her how to read and write. It got nowhere." The Kaddish, not a word of consolation. Towards the end, my father didn't respond to music. He didn't seem to hate it, he just didn't respond. Dismantled, incomplete. Enough agony, the knowing. The game played out, in the end, true. Thank you.
Let's have another round of applause for all of our readers. This was lovely, thank you. Please join us again in January. We'll have first year poet Aaron Lynch, alumnus Scott Driscoll, faculty Rick Kenny, second year fiction Natalie Bicknell, and me. Rachel. So enjoy your holidays, and we will see you.
Buy books.
Buy books. There are books in the back. Ty is selling books, and including Maya Sonnenberg's own 26 Objections, this adorable little book full of horrors. So check it out and have a great night, everybody.